Got my coconut.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have this.
You were citing.
Oh, yeah, and you can throw it. Yeah. Seeing
Good
that.
evening, sir. How are you?
Like to the next person who's gonna speak, and then it's microphone. But it's like this, like a 8x8 cube. So it's like a whole title, so if you dropped it on the ground, it wouldn't matter. I'll put it around here. Say, right, no, I know,
It's on me. I don't.
yeah, I can,
It's mandatory, not that.
not mandatory.
I'm trying to figure out where this foot out. I feel like probably like wearing itself. I'm not, I don't want to, I can scoot out, I'll sit down, I'll tell you, I'll do this. Sure.
Everyone that they do.
How's everybody doing this evening?
Great.
Good. Getting our rain coming, I think. Looks
Yeah.
like, got that feel in the air.
I rode my bike over, so it's. Whatever time of day, but
I wore white shoes, so it'll definitely.
plants.
That's so awesome.
Good.
We can get started.
Yeah, okay. So thank you, everybody, for coming out and joining this evening. This is an informal conversation. As you're aware, we had some emergency procedures put in about signs on the beach. I think Francis will lay down a little more guidelines than I will lay out right now. But I think we're trying to just limit ourselves to that conversation. Not let it expand into other things that may be equally important, but not germane to what we're trying to accomplish this evening. Ultimately, I would ask, we're all neighbors. We all live in the same community. We all got to live with each other. So regardless, and I'll say this about any conversation we ever have, we got to get along. We should get along, and we should be good neighborly folks. In general, as I try and think about how I'm solving things, I prefer not to go down some legal path. I'd rather just be good neighbor policy kind of thing. We all live in the same community. I personally intend to live here the rest of my life. So, let's try and just be kind to each other. There is no set time frame. There is no set, you got to have a coconut to speak, as we were talking about here. We'll let everybody speak, but please be respectful of each other's time and their comments. And let's refrain from arguing, any points back and forth. Ideally, this is just an exchange of ideas and thoughts and how we can find a solution that works for the entire community, hopefully. And let's just move forward. Again, no time frames. And I would just ask that, again, we just be respectful of each other's times. It's a small enough group. I wonder if we don't go around and just introduce ourselves so that we all know, who's kind of talking or not. But are you amenable to that? If not, will you please just maybe share your name out to the left here? I'll tell you what. I think everybody knows Francis, right? Our city manager. But why don't you start? If you don't mind, please.
Karen Marriott, District 1 Commissioner.
Sorry.
There's your cue.
Where's your cue? You want to introduce yourself?
Well, I would rather sit over here. I think the middle might be a little.
So I guess now that I'm on this side, I'm Scott Tate, the mayor. I live in Bella Vista. Been here 5 years and then live here the rest of my life. What is it? So,
Al Causey, I live in District 3 over on Punta Vista Drive, if you know where that is. And we moved here in 2017.
John Maldonado, District 4. I live on Vino Del Mar near Paso Road.
And I'm Ralph Brooks. I'm the city attorney and born and raised in Michigan, but came down for school, went to University of Miami, undergrad, marine science, then went to University of Florida for law school. And I've been representing beach communities now for over 30 years, including Bradenton Beach, Monroe County and the Florida Keys, this city, St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, a little town called Yankee Town in Levy County, and the Captiva Erosion Prevention District, and also represent other clients around the state. And I enjoy the beach and fishing and surfing, and play a little tennis and pickleball.
very cool. Wow, nice.
Lisa Kurzman, wife of John Kurzman, fan of St. Pete Beach.
Well, I have to say the same thing. John Kurzman, husband of Lisa Kurzman.
And we've lived here 8 years. I've been on the beach stewardship committee for about 6 of them. And been through multiple iterations, as other people in this room have been on previously been on the beach stewardship. And I've been through multiple iterations of panels where the beach stewardship and the city commission had rooms like this where we just talked through detail after detail. And a lot of it very related to the topic of tonight. Cool. Thank you.
Cindy Perry. I have been coming to this beach since I was 5 years old. I remember the aquatorium. I remember the wax museum. I remember the beach for years and years. My grandparents lived here. My parents lived here. I bought my first property here, I think, in 1994. And I've been living here permanently since 2010 and very much appreciate the beach. And I'm also, I belong to St. Petersburg Audubon and I volunteer to steward for the Black Skimmers. So if you want to know anything about birds, I'm the lady.
Any relationship to Trudy?
Laura.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Canary and I'm the Community Development Director with the city.
And center, please.
Yeah, my name is Mary Marino, and my husband and I have been owners of the Palm Crest Motel in residence of Bellwood. We've been here, I think we moved here in 1998 and have owned almost the Palm Crest for about 3 decades. So we've been here for a while. So we raised 3 kids, got 2 in college still.
So you know everything about me already.
Yeah.
Jack Marty now, Palm Crest Motel and Bella Vista resident.
Yeah, and we love living here. So.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Randy Brown. I've been coming here since the early 1960s. My grandfather was a doctor in the VA and had his office in the Don Cesar. Lived down at 3600 Gulf Boulevard. I currently live at 3820 Gulf Boulevard, Sancerre Condos. I'm vice president on the board, so I'm representing the 102 unit owners of Sancerre. And I love St. Pete Beach, been here 10 years.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, sir.
Don Stevens, I am also on the Beach Stewardship Committee. Husband of Nancy Stevens, dune saver. I am also involved with dune saving, and I'm here just to continue to be involved with one of the #1 assets the city has, is this beach. How do we protect it and make it even better?
Nancy Stevens, wife to John Stevens.
Who's stealing yours?
I know. And I've only been here for 6 years, but as soon as I got here and I loved it so much, I was like, I wanted to do whatever I could to protect our beaches, which goes to dune. So i.e. Dune Savers started in 2024. And so, you know, all about those native plants all throughout the island, the whole island. So.
Okay, I'm Dana Richardson. My husband, who's not here, he's a native Floridian, born and raised Clearwater. And we did not care for Clearwater Beach, so we moved down here in 2020. I'm one of those damn Yankees transplant from Northern Indiana, enjoying the beaches down here, living here for 6 years. And anyway, so we are an ex-lover of trade winds. We wanted to be in the area where all the actions is happening, the bars, the music, and we love trade winds until we moved there. Our access got taken away, fences were put up, people started getting kicked off the beach. I'd like to see this, whatever you want to call this, stop. Let's get along. Let's come up with a win-win between businesses, hotels on the beach and the residents, because we both care, but something's got to change, and that's where I'm at. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. My name's Marcianne, and we live on the beach. We represent the Beaumont, so we have about 100 units in there. And ditto on this. We want to preserve this because we should all be, thank you, Mr. Tate, because we should all be getting along. And it just seems like, you know, if we have these developers and hotels and residents, if we all put signs on our beach, imagine how that would look. or jogging into them at night. So we're here to preserve and protect. And it's awesome that everyone loves on their property. They kind of need to stay in their own. That's why we're here.
Hi, yep, I'm Vince Sullivan. I live in St. Pete Beach. I literally walk the beach every single morning of my life. Before I moved here, I lived in the Bahamas for 30 years. And walked that beach.
Man.
That's right. My grandpa moved here in 62. So you kind of said my feelings, which is, you know, when I walk in the morning, sometimes in the dark, especially in the winter, you know, I'm not against, if you own the property, you own the property. But putting metal signs out in the middle of where we're walking on the wet sand and sort of same thing. If we do it every 90 feet or 100 feet, we have these metal no parking type signs. It's ugly, but it's also dangerous. And I think maybe we're conflating safety and beauty with land ownership. Well, it's not one or the other. So that's just sort of my concern with the signs.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Good evening, I'm Dominic Isgrove, former Army infantry officer and attorney in private practice for the past 10 years. My wife Amanda and I have lived on 46th Ave in St. Pete Beach for the last decade and in Florida for the past 3. I'm here to advocate for customary use. I think the city needs to enact an ordinance. This is not a new issue in Florida or in our community. Private beachfront property owners routinely press these boundaries. They have been doing since the mid-70s when the famous Florida Supreme Court case came out about this issue, and it's never going to end. So there's a existing legal right that we as residents and members of the public have to use these public beaches, sovereign lands of the state of Florida, regardless of claims of private property ownership, which pop up perennially from any number of private actors. And it is flat out wrong to impinge upon the public's rights of access to these beaches that we all share and enjoy. It's not just their backyard, it's ours.
Understood. So first and foremost, thank you for your service. And then thank you for your feedback. I will say this to the group. I noticed I heard Francis write it. And so just to be clear with everybody tonight, we're trying to just focus on the sign ordinance and how we make something that is hopefully amenable to the community and ultimately enforceable if we have to. So customer use, I think we're just setting it aside because we think it's a broader, bigger topic. We're just trying to focus on the sign ordinance, which we emergency enacted, a few weeks back and acknowledged that it would be hard to enforce as written. And so we're trying to find, again, some solutions. Again, I would rather not be worrying about enforcement. I'd rather be worried about how we find something we can all get along with. I just want you to be aware that I don't think this is customer use as much as signs. So I just want to kind of be very vocal with you, but thank you for your service and appreciate your feedback.
And there will be a customary use
yes,
seminar on the 23rd of July. So
Swing my thunder.
Sorry, we were just doing introductions, but yes,
We have that.
we will have that coming up. And so it is not off of our schedule. We're just saying tonight's not.
Mia culpa.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Ellie Heller, District 4, been coming here for 40 years, lived here now permanently since 2019. Here to I hope to continue to enjoy the beaches. Don't look forward to parking signs up and down the beaches.
Thanks, sir.
Melanie Vandegrift. I'm here representing Island Inn Resort down at One Paso Grill Way. I've worked there for 14 years now. I'm representing the owner who's owned it for 40 years. And unfortunately, the sign ordinance comes down to enforceability. You can't enforce liability issues without signs. And that's direct from the sheriff. So that's where we stand on this.
You say that one more time for me. You can't
Well,
enforce it.
sign up saying it's private property, the sheriff will not enforce it.
Understood. Okay. Good day.
So that is our issue with it. And we are at no man's land because the dog beach is no longer a dog beach and it's chaos. It's anarchy down there.
Understood. Yeah.
Robert Savant, developers at Model Beach Hotel, Bayview, and Bay Palms. I've been coming to this island for 47 years. I'm actually 47 years old. My grandparents first took me here when I was 10 months old. And then my parents moved down here when I was 10 years old. So I've been here my entire life. Love St. Pete Beach, live it. It is my city. The beaches, I unfortunately don't want to disappoint some people, but it is private. They always have been private. They've been private since I've been growing up. I've been kicked off the Trade Winds beaches. I've been kicked off the Donzar beaches as a kid. People that are older here that grew up here know that they've always been private. It just we're forcing them now more than we have. We've always enforced them, but people have changed now, so we're forcing it more. I've sat on the comp plan in 2000 to 2015. I've sat on the master plan from 2000 to 2015. Been a liaison and ambassador to the Chamber of Commerce. Helped bring the sheriff department here in 2012. I brought Krispy Kreme here. I brought Dunkin' Donuts here. I brought Starbucks here. I bend over backwards for this beach, and I am continuing to work for the beach and help its residents and help everybody get along. And that's all we want is try to get it done, but everybody needs to understand what the law is and where the borders are, and that's all we're asking for. So hotels are not bad. Hotels are here to help everyone. We do a lot for the community. We donate a lot. We give back to the community. So the hotels aren't bad. We just have to respect everyone's boundaries and everyone's private property. That's what it comes down to. So we're here to try to find a resolution to try to make that happen.
Thank you, sir. And I will acknowledge that I know Francis is going to walk us through some of the details of it, and we've got our city attorney with us as well. So it's not debated right now, but we will get into a lot of these topics. So thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lance Browning. I've lived here since 1987 on Vina Del Mar. Our family owns Toll Beach Bar, and I'm just here to listen to see what's going on.
Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Julie Causey. I'm wife to Alan Monty.
Leslie Price, lived here since about 2010. My husband is retired military, grew up military brat from McGill. And so once he retired from the military, we came back to where we began here, the Tampa area, and of course the beaches. He grew up trying to imagine that he could ever live out here this close to the beach, and he's like ecstatic that he's able to. I am active with Sea Turtle Trackers and the Beach Ambassador Program and Dune Savers, and I'm trying to come to all the beach stewardship meetings that I can. Love the beach, hear about the beach, and I understand there are so many conflicting uses and priorities that this is one heck of a topic to always try and conquer, and it probably never will be conquered, but hopefully we can get a little bit more peaceful about it.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you and your husband found his dream come true. So congratulations. Yes, sir.
My name is Christopher Hollins. Boy, 40 years ago, I came down here, went out to the beach, and that's it. I've probably been on the beach every morning, virtually doing yoga, meditative arts. And I'm a civil engineer. I'm a professional engineer for the state of Florida. I'm retired, but I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the lines on a set of plans and a lot of signs, and anything that was kind of in the right of way was my purveyor for a lot of years. So be interesting to hear.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir.
Sheldon worked on the beaches, use the beaches, have properties here, and I'm a fan of signs. There's signs everywhere. There's so many in this room. When you travel abroad, you go on cruises and you go to the Bahamas, there's hundreds of signs for air braiding and letting you know where you can and can't be. I think there's a huge value in knowing that. And like she said, piggybacking with her about enforcing it. Having businesses, you can't even tow a car unless there's a tow sign there to let people know. So as to what that entails and with these teen takeovers that are happening all over the county now with private property and knowing where it is, it's kind of like letting, signs. I think signs are needed, and there's a huge value to enforcing that and people staying in your lines. And as a consumer as well, going to a property, you just feel a little safer and knowing you're kind of protected by a quote sign. But the sign's more than just a sign. It's kind of educating people what's behind the sign. Just yeah.
Thank you. I'm stand up just to make sure I didn't miss anybody, but I think I got it right. And Ms. Robinson, I know you joined us a bit late. Just introduce yourself, please.
Oh, hi.
Everybody probably knows her, but I should be clear. But the only person who hasn't.
Lisa Robinson, Commissioner of District 2. I lived on the beach, this beach, for well over 35 years. I grew up on Treasure Island prior to that, so the beaches were my playground and still are. So I've seen as well a lot go on the beach.
Thank you. All right, so I think Francis is going to guide us through, kind of her process, if you will, and then I'll turn it over to you, Francis.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, welcome and thank you. It's exciting to see actually some new faces. I haven't been able to interact with some of you in this room in this forum before. So appreciate you coming out and spending your precious time with us tonight. The goal tonight is for us to walk away with feedback from you all so that we can take that to the city attorney's office, and then he will attempt to craft some language for consideration for the commission on a second reading of the sign ordinance. The first reading of that sign ordinance happened the same evening as the emergency sign ordinance. So we have 60 days to take action on a second reading, or the emergency ordinance goes away and we start over with any sort of type of process, that legislative process we would want to go through. So like the mayor stated tonight, and this is a little more definition wise, the purpose is to discuss solutions for safely delineating the boundary between public beach areas and private beach front property. And if you ask why are we here tonight, we've been having conflicts on the beach between private property owners and public residents, public tourists. And so we began to get complaints from both sides. And so this is what perpetuated us being here, as well as signage being placed in and very near the water line, which the city considered to be a safety concern. And we want to focus tonight on what are some practical and effective ways to mark and communicate private property boundaries while promoting public safety and awareness. So as the mayor stated tonight, if you want to, if there's some topic comes up, I'm going to put it up here so that I heard you, and we'll continue those discussions with the commission and get direction from them on where they would like us to spend our time and energy. But we're not talking about property lines, whether a certain parcel is private, what the lines are, where the construction coastal water line is, where the mean high water line is, none of that kind of technical detail. And here you can see we have the updated beach ordinances are going to the city commission on the first reading is going to be June 9th. So that meeting is going to have two different beach ordinances. One is related to behaviors. So when you think behaviors, think alcohol on the public and private beaches, bikes, dogs, all those things. So if you're interested in those topics, I encourage you to come on the 9th. Yes, sir.
About garbage in that conversation.
I believe that there's it's like how do you littering, yes, all that type of stuff, glass on the beach, those sort of fires. It's a very, very long ordinance. And then the second piece of that is the wildlife protections. So that's turtle lighting, that's skimmer protections, fireworks is a hot topic. So if you're interested in those, you're going to have a platform to discuss that. And if you're not really familiar with local legislative process, the first reading, it's the commission's chance to hear the public's reaction to the first draft. And then they provide guidance to staff to make any changes based on public feedback and their final decision. And then that's when the second ordinance comes back for a final reading and all the publications and notices go out to the public. All right. So just a little background, the emergency ordinance was passed, and it basically modified the city's land development code by adding sections that prohibited all non-governmental signs, posts, poles within 50 feet landward of the mean high water line along the Gulf. It applied broadly to all sign types, regardless of size, permanence, or construction. And there was allowable exceptions for only official government signage necessary for the public purpose. And we have heard from many residents about some issues, concerns, and so I'll talk you through some of the ideas staff has already come up with that we want to talk to you about and hear from you. What's not changing, and I'm trying to control the rumor mill, is you in areas below the mean high water line, so generally the wet sand and customary use dry sand areas that have always been used by the public. And for St. Pete Beach, you can traverse the beach. No one can tell you can't walk through their beach. You can swim. The water is a constitutional right for you to be bathing, swimming. You can be on your raft, no matter who is behind that water.
Please don't formally bathe. Yeah, okay.
You can stand, walk, and watch the sunset. And you can fish where you're not endangering swimmers. What I think where our conflict is coming is landward on the private beaches. You cannot set up tents, chairs, coolers, or picnics unless you have permission of the property owner. And so I just don't want you all to leave here and be like, we can't walk the beach anymore, because that's not true. So this is.
So we're sitting down on the Talcott though on this.
City attorney's like to answer that.
Yeah, up in that right-hand corner, the public can access the water for swimming, bathing, and rafting. If you're in the wet sand area, or if you're in the area that's dry sand that's adjacent to that wet sand area, that's customary use, where it's been always ancient and customary and been used since time immemorial for setting up a towel while or laying down a towel while you go swimming. You can do that.
So that should be on the upper right-hand corner. We were modifying this.
But the signs are actually in the wet sand.
Well, we're gonna get to that. So we're gonna try to fix that tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so just wanted to kind of give you the norm lay of the land. So based on some of the feedback we've received of the problems we're having with the poles that have been installed, is some ideas for the second reading of the beach ordinance so far are to amend 50 feet from the mean high water line to from the mean high water line or visible water line, whichever is more landward.
Will you explain why we the rationale as to why that new thought has come up?
Yes,
If you don't mind, please.
So essentially, for enforcement purposes, anyone can see where the water is. And they could have a measuring tape and they could go measure and see where that sign is. And so that would be easily enforceable if we saw that that was not occurring. The reason it's mean high water line or is because if you have a very, very, very low tide, hypothetically, someone could put the sign 50 feet from the mean high water line and it would technically still be in public property. So that was the reason for that. We're proposing that it's a permit process. So you have to get a sign permit. So you can't just go out and install signs. You would need to come to the city, give your proposal. A survey would be required. So now we are actually, the property owner is giving us the information we need. And they would go through the same sign permitting process that happens anywhere else in the city when you want to put a sign out or up. And then the allowable sign type must be removed daily. So this would remove the permanency of the sign. And so those who are walking in the middle of the night, maybe you're less likely to be tripping over objects.
There's some very good concepts here, but one thing that it makes me a little nervous just in terms of intent is what it sounds like you're intending to do. I'm not sure would be accomplished with a survey. You know, I've spent time in search vaults and they don't even keep the surveys, they keep the deeds, because deeds are the actual the document that describes. Now, many of us have bought homes. If you had a mortgage, you most likely had to get title insurance. And as part of that, there's also a title search, because even the deed does not describe the easements, such as the deeds that I've seen for some of the hotels that explicitly say there's an exception because the public uses the beach. So that would not be seen in a survey. And it would not necessarily, many easements wouldn't be seen in a deed. So what really should be provided is a title search.
So I can tell you that the survey does show the line and the point exact. So it's actually done with Florida DEP, and Florida DEP gives you the land coordinates of the markers. So having property on the beach that we're discussing right now, you know, I've seen my survey and I can tell you the survey is pinpoints, will tell you exactly where the markers are. So the survey is without a doubt the best.
That is showing you property boundaries. And what we're talking about is use rights. So a property boundary, it's sort of like a red herring to say, well, I've got great certification of my corner marker. If your corner marker is not meaningful due to easements that allow the public to use that area. So that's where a deed or a title search is very important. And in fact, I've seen deeds where when the sale happened to a grandfather, we don't want to go, well, when sales have happened, they didn't necessarily mention the riparian rights. It only got put back in 20 years later as a corrective deed. That doesn't make it that they really bought those riparian rights. They could have been split off.
Okay.
So that's why title search is very important.
I've noted. Yes, ma'am.
If you require us to remove a sign daily, that obviously you're leaning towards like an A-frame sign. I'm in a district where A-frames are illegal.
So
why do I do that?
These are why we're.
Because I had an A-frame sign on the beach and code enforcement gave me a lovely phone call.
Right, that's why we're here. Exactly why we're here, right? So look, we can bend just like everybody else should hopefully be able to bend, so.
It's a tough district.
Yeah. Talk to your commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My phone number is definitely posted.
Any else? Yes, ma'am.
When you say to have the sign removed daily, much of the problem occurs usually night, so for the sheriff's purposes, for the residents, for the users, that really is not helping half of the time the beach is being used. And so much in many areas is more heavily used at night even than during the day.
So are we suggesting, I'm asking city manager, not telling. Because we're just listening from a commissioner right now. But I'm asking, are you alluding to sunset instead of daily? Would that help clarify or?
I'm open to idea. These were just some, so the idea is sunset versus daily.
So maybe to help with that, I did have a conversation with Bruno Falkenstein earlier today, and he was saying that there's folks going out to observe turtles like at the early hours of 2-3 a.m. kind of thing. So maybe what the sheriff's contacts with people would help in determining what hours we're having people.
So talk to the sheriff about.
Get some input, just
Okay.
an analysis. and
Sheriff on.
Contact, yeah, just contact time.
So when you're talking about these signs, we're particularly talking about down in the wet sand, down by the water line, or because to me, there's a big difference, and I think what you're talking about with like 2 a.m. issue. I don't think you're talking about down by the water. There's signs that are clearly on the dry sand where the chairs are. And I don't think that's what we're addressing here at all. And that will be the same regardless, right? Throw you 2 a.m, you can throw people off your private property. I think right now we're really talking about this down by the wet sand. It's a completely different issue. And that's where we're talking about the removable signs, etc.
I think there's an important delineation to be made though, because over the years, and this is prior to any people here being on the commission anyway. If any hotel went out and started putting even orange cones on the beach, and I'm talking orange cones in the dry sand, way up in the dry area, code enforcement would go over them, they'd have a discussion, and ultimately those cones were removed. You weren't allowed to have signs anywhere on the beach. You were not allowed to start marking lines. We didn't want it to look like some other city where every lot had another fence or string or even little cones. And it would be a major change to, I don't know what's happened. First off, there's no, in response to this A-frame issue, our ordinances actually talk about signs in different districts, but not the P zone. The entire beach is in the P zone, the preservation zone. So that's something that we really have to clean up as part of this, because it's an A-frame isn't in the boutique district or the large resort district. If it's on the sand, it's actually on the preservation zone.
I was told by code enforcement that because A-frames are not allowed in my zone, specifically in the ordinance, then they are not allowed in my zone.
But the preservation zone is the sand, which is a separate zone. So we just need to get that covered too. But you're agreeing that they have told you, stopped signs.
We thought it was a great compromise that we would put it out during the day, and then when our office closed at 5 o'clock, which is before sunset, we would move it in as our last duty before we left. We thought this was a compromise, and code enforcement said, take it away or you're going to the magistrate. But you can put in a pole. So we put in a pole.
No. They told you that?
Yes.
Wow.
How long ago?
We've had the pole for like 5 years now. And we've had to put it back after the hurricane because it went away.
To address the cones, John, the reason the cones are there is for the sheriff to be able to delineate where the private and public beaches are. So that's why the sheriff needs to be able to enforce it, but they can't enforce it if there's no cones or no fence. And the other option is to build a fence. And I mean, that is an option. It is an option. We don't want to go there. So we definitely don't want to go there. The fence is an option to be able to fence it out, but we don't want to go there. So we're trying to come up with a reasonable idea of what we can do to make it work out.
I know you mentioned
Put up cones like Kentucky Road and they're all over the place down the line. I'm pretty sure a sheriff can look at a corner point to a straight line down where your fence is and figure out where a line is and say.
Well, the property is not straight, it actually goes on an angle. So the beach is all on an angle a little bit. So that's why they build an angle on an angle.
Yeah, well, again, if there's a corner sign and there's a fence, existing fence on the north side of the property, pretty easy to stand behind the sign and look at the fence.
Usually pretty straight.
But you don't know how far it will go out, because if you look at the changes that Pinellas made due to the fact that 3 properties have already submitted where they think their property is, it now looks like a jigsaw puzzle already. Because, for instance, the Plaza Beach goes all the way out to the beach, but the condos right next to it between it and the county park only goes about halfway out. And then if you look at the Undertow, which has also done it, they're at a different depth. So you don't know. So it's not just a matter of following the lines out. It's how far do those lines go out. So we need to make sure we have a blanket footage of some sort.
That is true, that the different lots on this beach have different depths of public use.
And so it's also important because in the past, I've heard that no one has gotten trespassed, from properties. And there's been attempts to trespass people where the sheriff's office even apologized. I didn't hear that it was due to lack of a mark, because actually they were told, hey, this is it. But there were many more aspects of this. So to focus on the sign, when I was at the library yesterday, there was a sign that said, parking only for the library use. Now, if I felt that maybe people should park for other reasons, the issue isn't just the fact of how often they have signs. The issue is, why do you think people can only park at the library when they're using the library? As an example, it's, and there is a reason. But in the same way, the question isn't just where the sign goes, but why do you think you can start trespassing people if we have a customer use that didn't allow trespassing, but you can of course get rid of them for disorderly persons? Are they drunk? Are they doing something bad behavior wise? So that's a fundamental question that I think has to be answered as part of it. Sign, because it's not where you put the sign, it's what you think that sign is intended to accomplish. And I think we really have to, that's the elephant in the room, is whether they're allowed to start trespassing people, or even if they have that fence or border or deed they've uploaded. I mean, I think it's a fundamental to the issue.
Just circling back to where we are and what we're trying to deal with here, because I mean, I know for me, I don't question your property up. It's all about the wet sand, and you said the signs. I mean, it reminds me of that. I remember the 5-man electrical band signs. I'm calling here for people need not apply.
Signs everywhere.
Like, I've never seen signs like parking signs on the beach. I've been to all the beautiful beaches in the world.
I've been to 67 countries around the world.
Great, and they have parking signs on the beach.
No parking signs. They actually run ropes all the way down there with 2 security guards on each side to stop people from going.
Great, so glad we're not that.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, there's an accident.
But I'm specifically talking about the sort of parking signs. And I think I don't know if it was you guys. Did you guys have like a big bear out thing over the weekend last week? Because that was cool. And but they established a property line, and I'm looking at it going, that's perfect. But the metal posts, the metal signs, and addressing where and like, instead of saying this isn't your property, or it is, because it gets so difficult with the high water line. The wet sand, sort of the way you're speaking, is just to make it visible and make that where we're able to walk, and the signs can't go below that.
So I think you're just reading that. So it says visible water line. So visible water line. So where we actually have our sign, I'm sure everyone saw our signs. We actually have a sign there. We even have a 50-foot measuring tape on those signs. So if you've actually gone those signs in the last 2 days, you'll see the new sign with the 50-foot measuring tape there, because we actually own the sand 50 feet. The city told us we can't put a sign in the water, so we moved those. The rebar, first off, just so everybody knows, full disclosure, was not put in by us. The rebar was put in by the property surveyor. So a surveyor uses rebar. If you ever had a survey at your house, you'll notice there's stakes and rebar in the corners of your properties. Those that don't, now you know. So the actual surveyor put the rebar in. We were asked by the city to remove the rebar and put a 4x4 in, and that's what we did. So we put a 4x4, it's fluorescent, it was easy to recognize. Then the emergency meeting happened, so we removed the 4x4 were stolen. The 4x4 were stolen. We actually were able to move 50 feet back because they said they didn't want anything within 50 feet. So now we have a sign that is 50 feet from the mean high water line with a tape measure that goes 50 feet. The wet sand is still our sand unless it's past the 50 feet. So on a low tide, like we've had a couple low tides for this past week, we were like super low. You actually can go past the 50 feet and you can actually be in that wet sand over there. But just because it's wet sand doesn't mean it's private or public property. It is 50 feet from the mean high water line where you can measure out to where you can see where the property is. So
I just talked to your attorney about chapter 117 Florida statutes and what that actually means, because that's not true.
It's true. It's true.
But what you're saying, and versus misreading, I was listening to you. We were talking about the wet sand. We were talking about the visible high tide line, correct?
The visible water line. So the water.
Well, I mean, I'm just, by common sense, hearing what you're saying, which is where the high tide goes, the swash line, and the signs are below that. I'm not disputing what your actual physical ownership might be. We're talking about where these signs should go, talking about safety, even those poles, which, by the way, I'm not sure of this. I walk every morning with my 8-year-old son. I think those poles, the tide took them away. We saw one floating at like 5 in the morning, one of them.
Well, people then.
People
don't like the poles, they'll go down, they start shaking.
Okay, I saw one floating and
then since they don't,
but anyway,
probably shook.
so I think kind of back to, this is mine for sure, according to my survey, versus, okay, we're talking about where everyone's walking, safety, where the signs and what type of signs can go where. And not necessarily disputing your actual ownership according to a survey, right? And so I took what you said to actually mean the visible water line, the swash line, the wet sand.
In relation to where we were.
Signs that go.
Sign.
That's what I'm talking about, not in relation to what your private property ownership is, but just in relation to the sign.
And the sign can communicate.
And right, and then the other thing is those signs, like, I thought you guys did put that there up because I thought that accomplishes the same thing a little higher up, but like, why metal? I've never seen metal parking signs and you know, on beautiful beach. I mean, it's ugly, right?
I think the key question is, how can we help the people that have private rights to protect and do the business that they expect to do? And in the past meetings that we've had in beach stewardship with the city commissions and with past attorneys, we were actually changing the rule that it used to be that the only posts that really got put out there were the posts around the alcohol cabana zone. And in fact, it was decided during the joint meetings that we weren't even going to have a sign on the outside facing out. It wasn't permitted to say, hey, don't enter. That wasn't what it was for. The only signs that were being considered were something on the inside facing in saying, hey, don't leave with your alcohol. And I was actually recommending that we rethink that. But so the point was that there wasn't everybody putting signs out and marking properties, and that was not the customary use of this beach. Different beaches may be different. Fort Walton Beach had a different history. And even Reddington and other beaches might have different histories. But for the history of this beach, there were no fences, there were no property posts, there were no property lines anywhere on the beach. And it was one of the beautiful things that attracted us to this beach and many other people.
And
Yes,
signs,
Gentleman back.
I just wondering, I just Googled private beach signs because you just keep saying things and there's hundreds of places around the world that say end of public beach, private property, no trespassing, private boundaries, entering private cabana area. And just simple Google search. So I'm not.
Google search.
But I'm just saying there's
The signs are all about our things and that's such. Like it's.
Come on, please, one at a time, please.
Thank you. Like a stop sign.
The city tells us they want to put in sign, they will do whatever the city wants to sign.
But I think the real thing, sorry, is where it is, and as opposed to establishing your property line, which this is just to say, put the signs up above the wet sand and the swash line.
What about my liability?
That's one of our, I mean, that's one of our big problems about that. It's the liability.
My husband was a personal injury attorney, and he went to Gulf Beaches Elementary, so I've been here my whole life, and it's like, it's all fun and games, so the Clearwater Beach thing, obviously happens here. It's supposed to come here this weekend, St. Pete Beach, I don't know if you guys have been following that. But I mean, like, there's a liability thing that you have a way to say, hey, this is private, and I think beautiful signs are just educational. Disney World, private property, no trespassing, right to refuse service, I mean, there's signs everywhere.
I love that you brought that up, because the thing that I was clamoring, trying to understand on this beach was, why weren't the businesses more concerned about what happens on the beach? Why don't they have lifeguards at every beach to make sure nobody drowns off their beach? Well, the answer is because they don't claim that it's theirs. They actually let it just be. And as long as they still have this ability to just let it be, but the moment you start putting a sign and you put a fence and you claim territory, you better have that liability insurance too that covers the beach. And that's just ugly. Why do we want to move to that? Why don't we just stay the way we have been, where you just sort of, you're on the beach, it's a public thing. I own it, but I'm not controlling it, and leave it alone.
Can I ask, if you don't mind, please, if you don't mind, please, I'd like to understand what's maybe the root cause of precipitating the need for the sign in the first place. Is it because I need to know where enforcement is, because I'm making this up, I'm not telling you what your rationale is. Is it because we've got people that are being disruptive, that are drunk, and we can't get them off the beach when they're trouble, and I'd really like to get them out, but we got no way of saying, Sheriff, look, this is my beach, get them off my beach, right? Theoretically, it's my private property, please get them off this private property, right? If it's something of that effect about enforceability of getting somebody that's being disruptive off of your land, I think I'd like to understand the root cause. Really, it's a root reason why we feel like we need to, because I've been to this beach for 40 years. I lived on it for 40 years, but I grew up in the area, so I've been coming to this beach a long time. And there's never been signs up and down the beach historically. I'll acknowledge that. But I also understand, as I'll say, it's private property. You should be able to enforce it. You don't want, you own a property line. You own down to something down there, right? And you need to make sure that it's not a liability on you. You've got to make sure that you can enforce and get somebody off of your property that's being disruptive. Again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what is the rationale for needing to mark your zone so that we can then enforce your zone? Please, somebody help. Yeah.
I work down by Dog Beach. Most of my guests are older. Our business is a sole proprietorship. If one of my guests is on my beach and gets knocked over by a dog, just saying hi, they could sue my owner personally because it's a sole proprietor and go after him. Because it was on my property, because they are my guests. My insurance only covers registered guests. So if that dog is a guest of my property, I am covered by my insurance. If that dog belongs to Joe Schmo off the beach, I have been bitten on the beach. I could have sued my boss, and that dog was gone. I couldn't go after the owners. So who do you go after? And my boss could lose everything because somebody tackled him on his a guest on his beach, and our insurance says, well, wasn't a guest, wasn't a guest of your hotel. We're not covering that the person's being knocked over.
I have a question about where signs go. Is there not a way that you can put signs at the beginning of your property, at access points to your property, that say specifically all the information that
if anybody were to go on your beach, that they would see that that's your property.
The problem we had with it was the sheriff would come out and they'd say, well, we don't know where your property lines are, so we can't enforce it, and then we would
Yes.
walk away.
So how-
The problem is further down. The problem is not on the property. The problem is all the way near the water.
But how are they getting on? Are they getting?
Public
Public
beach
beach
access.
access.
Yeah.
I think it would help a lot if the city actually posted something saying that St. Pete Beach has private and public areas, but there's.
Especially at the public beach.
But there's nothing that says
Right.
anything about St. Pete Beach being public.
So we down in on the southern part, what she's referring to and talking to, it used to be a former dog beach. Now there's a sign that says no longer a beach, enter at your own risk. So this may be something, Madam City Manager, that we might consider is to have very generic signs that talk about liability and users basically coming in and using it at their own risk, whether it's public or private. I think this would help the hoteliers with some of their liability concerns. And then the other thing with drunk and disorderly, that applies to public and private property. The sheriff's not going to differentiate whether we have an attorney here, we've got one right next to us. Whether you're being drunk and disorderly on a private property or a public property, if you're disturbing the peace, you're disturbing the peace. So I think that those concerns can be addressed generically. And they should be addressed. I mean, that's our jobs, right? Is to make sure that we provide a safe public and private environments.
Yes, sir.
To address the other root cause that's probably not gonna come out tonight, which is NIMBY. Okay? NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Okay.
All right? Had a 45-minute conversation with Mr. Cezanne's brother a couple months back. I asked him flat out, the same exact question we're discussing here. Why is it that you guys all of a sudden started doing this? I've lived here for a decade, you've never done it. Want to know the real reason? Okay, because we don't want kids throwing footballs, people of a certain cultural background playing a certain type of music, people blocking the view, people using the beach. Regular people using the beach. I don't know.
Your wife comes and sits right in front of our cabanas and blocks our view.
We were 10 feet from the water. I have photos of it. Okay.
That's the
Second of
problem.
all,
So you are.
second of all,
Us, we don't want to see,
This is-
we don't want to
this
see
is-
Coney Island out in front of our property either. We want to see the Gulf of America. We don't want to see.
yeah, you don't want to see
100
anybody in front of your.
Correct.
your-
Yes, yes, sir.
Claim to be
Public
private.
beaches,
I
right?
know.
There's
I know,
public
the other explained it all to me, but it isn't about liability. Let's not.
Oh, it's a lot.
It hasn't been about liability since the 80s. We haven't done that since.
We've been kicking people off all the time.
Right. So it's really about keeping people from accessing what they consider to be their private property, not because of drunk and disorderly, as Commissioner Maldonado correctly points out, that applies anywhere on the scene. This is about not in my backyard. You heard Mr. Zazan say it 2 commission meetings ago, this is my backyard. Well, it's ours too.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no, it is.
So here's
That's what
what I can say,
customary-
so I want to just answer your question as well. Why we haven't changed. The beaches haven't changed. What happened is people have changed. You look at the older generation. The older generation looks at the younger generation. The younger, like, oh, they're so entitled. They want this, they want that. Guess what? The older generation is the exact same way. They feel entitled now as well. You know what screwed everybody up? COVID. Because everybody changed after COVID. We never had these issues prior to COVID. And now 2, 3 years, 4 years after COVID, people are different. And that's the problem. People just feel entitled that they can just sit on your beach and do whatever they want. They can play their music. They can sit in front of a cabana. And that's a problem. So now we need to start taking action. We've always taken action, but now we're ready to the next level where we need to start enforcing it. And we can get away with signs. We don't need signs as long as the sheriff can find where our property markers are. So for instance, if you would put down buoys, if you would just put small crab trap buoys at the corners of our properties, the sheriff will know exactly where those buoys flow, and then we don't need signs anymore. We don't want signs. Put a couple of buoys in there so the sheriff can find exactly where the property markers are, and that solves the problem.
Without getting too contentious, I'm gonna acknowledge that what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Cezanne, is that you would like just the rationale for you is that it's enforceable because we know the mark that you become private property versus not. And you want to just be able to acknowledge, for the sheriff to acknowledge, yes, I understand that this now is your private property and therefore we can enforce. Because what I heard you say is heretofore, they basically said, I don't know where your property lines ends. I can't confirm that they are or not.
Exactly.
Right. I think you're just, that's real. I'm trying to just make sure that I understand your rationale is that we're trying to find that it's really clear to everybody what is enforceable and what is not, which is in this case, junk distorted, it doesn't apply, but trespassing and such would be on private property versus not, correct? I think and so now I'm trying to find, I know you can, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't keep, assuming that we have to worry about a metal sign or something like that. I think we're just trying to, if I'm hearing you right, make sure that I gather both sides. If I could magically just walk down the beach and go, this line is private, this line is public, then you wouldn't have a concern. But here's the problem: is we got to delineate it, we got to define it, and you've got to therefore be able to make it enforceable if needed.
Right, the sheriff needs to have an idea of where the property, so we have to delineate where the property markers are. We can figure out a way, and it's obviously not going to be post, it may not be a sign. Like I said, buoys, water, it can go to the water. Whatever we have to figure out to make sure that the sheriff understands, but then also the residents understand where it is as well, because everybody has to understand where the markers are. And
I think education goes to that. I kept interrupting you and I apologize. And I see you back in the back as well. I'm sorry.
Your point about the music and the footballs and stuff. If I'm charging somebody $350, $400 a night to enjoy my beach, and there's somebody blasting rap music, I'm going to hear them complain every day. I'm going to have them check out early because they can't have a quiet enjoyment of the beach. And I know that there's going to be children playing, there's going to be things, but if they're erecting 10 by 10 tents on my property and blocking my guest who's paying hundreds of dollars a night, supporting my business, supporting the county with the bed tax, I can't enforce it.
Well, that's why they have public areas. That's where they should go.
Exactly.
Right. Listen, I know there's a hand that keeps popping up in the back and yeah. And then I see you as well, sir. I don't want to see it, but Kelly?
No, I'm sorry. Dana?
Dana.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, hopefully I can remember. Let me just get it out. First of all, just question, has there even been a lawsuit ever that's happened on the beach where the hotel got sued?
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah, multiple.
Okay, second. Back to this, who owns what? It's a city that takes care of the beach. It rakes it, it takes care of the trash. The city doesn't rake it anymore?
We have to haul that sand back from the storm on our own spot. All done.
Oh, so every hotel rakes their own beach?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I contacted somebody like a year ago and they said that they raked it was in the, okay, that's okay. This is why I'm asking, because I get
Well, who's
feedback.
the guy that drives the tractor?
He's hired, you gotta hire him personally.
And he goes to certain properties.
He doesn't work for the city.
Yeah, he's an independent contractor.
And then back to your thing on the 10 by 10 tents. So even if I'm I have a lot of skin cancer, but I would like to go to the beach and I will be doing the tent. But if I'm in my space, that's considered until we deal with the other thing, the customer use bit, which is not discussed today. Are you saying I should not be able to put up my 10 by 10 tent if I'm in my space? Because it's still gonna block your people's view.
Public beach.
You put it on the public beach? No, I mean, our space that's designated as of today with the current is 50 yards or feet from the high mean water.
That's just where the sign came out. That's not the legal property line.
But we're able to be, we don't have to be just in
You
wet
can be in the
sand.
wet sand.
You have to be in the water.
You gotta be in the
water. not
Well,
wet
now
sand.
we get into a whole
Yeah.
different.
Like you were saying, we have the right to walk there on.
You cannot put these down.
Don't park
Well,
there.
then this goes back to Mr. Upham back in the 50s that screwed us over because he worked a deal with the city to say, hey, you give us all your streets and avenues that run into the Gulf of Mexico, which was our accesses, and we'll give you Upham Beach. But now Upland Beach is really for day trippers. And so now residents, you're telling me I have to go to the public beach or I have to go to Upham as a secondary citizen.
Yeah, there's a passing
Okay,
grill.
that's a whole-
That's why it's a fundamental issue.
Clarification.
Another 10.
I want everybody to recognize how absolutely absurd it would be to have the thousands of visitors to St. Pete Beach stuck at the public beach access area or in Upham, but nowhere else on the entirety of St. Pete Beach, unless of course you're willing to pay $20 for beach chair for his property and the other 12 that want to do exactly the
They want to
same thing.
elevate their experience.
This is absurd.
Yes, sir, in the back. I know you've been raising a lot.
Oh, well, everything has a VIP experience. I mean, you pay for anything. You
Yeah,
go
go to
to
Disney.
you go to a hotel, you go to Disney, you pay for a cabana, Adventure Island. Yeah, okay, so two things real quick. So like this signage, because I'm just over here, media, Pinellas County Sheriff's, there's signs on the ground, keep access clear, emergency escape window. Why is there a sign on there that says employee entrance? There's clearly a keypad, but there's a sign right here, but because it's not a beach, it's not an issue.
Right.
So.
Correct. It's a beach.
But the liabilities are still there. The liabilities are still there.
Let me finish, please.
But the last part of it was, we put rocks in front of our houses here to stop people from driving up on them. And whatever rock color we want, whatever decide we want, to stop people to show that's our property, don't drive your car and park there. So if I were to stand in front of his house, right, and she's mentioning the reasoning, if I stood in front of his house for 10 minutes, just dressed however, he's gonna call the cops and say there's somebody suspicious standing out front of my house. So we just have to remember, like, property's property, whether it's business or it's personal, he would protect it and lose his mind calling, saying there's a guy standing in front of my house, just standing here. Why is it any different? Because it's a beach, so.
Well, it is. It is.
And the customer use
Explain what your
doctrine.
father about the case in 1974 when they came up with the customer use doctrine. Right, that's a legal thing that applies specifically to the beach, not my residential property or your residential property.
You know, I know you raised your hand, Earl. I'm gonna give you the time, because I saw you raise your hand.
Okay.
But yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would just like to share a little story. I totally appreciate, we've been business owners our whole life. I get what they're saying, I do. The signs, metal signs and walking area, that's a whole different animal. It's ridiculous, it's littering, it's ugly, it's like, move this, we can designate, I'm sure, property lines, in a way, but not where it affects everyday people of just, I live on the beach. But I want to share a story real quick, because I know that we had this issue with the undertow, with those big signs that were on the beach. And so I'm jogging on the beach the other day and I noticed this guy, and it was the undertow, and there was an elderly couple sitting in the water with their chairs. And I jog up and the guy is telling them they got to move. And I said, dude, now this is like, we got to play nice. We got to play nice. I live on the beach. It's okay. Like what, we just can't be all uptight unless there's an issue. And I understand the liability, attorneys, whatever, that's another animal. But this guy is literally making these people get up out of their chairs, sitting in the water, just enjoying themselves. And I actually went to their aid and I pretty much told the guy to leave him alone and go call the sheriff or two if he needed to. But they are under the understanding that they own clear into the water. And even if they do, something's got to be done to just protect the decency of our community and the beauty of what God has given us all. And it doesn't mean that we need to tolerate the crazy, the rappers, whatever you might not like. It's okay. I understand that. But we're talking metal signs in the water where everybody is, they're jogging, they're walking, and disrupting people that are not making any trouble at all because they have a thing about you sitting on their beach in the water. And by the way, nobody's ever on their beach. Nobody.
Yeah, so listen, I'm also cognizant that we are here trying to give guidance to city staff on how we move forward with some kind of ordinance. So I think we've got a lot of opinions going back and forth. No, listen, I appreciate it. I really do. I sincerely do. And I'm going to turn to city manager and ask, is there any questions you have of us that might help you?
There's no more comments. You've been waiting.
Please, sorry, please.
I was just gonna say, I'm having a lot of trouble separating where the signs can go from what was decided by the legislature of Florida regarding customary use, because customary use very specifically is trying to protect the ability of all Floridians to use the beach so that no one owns straight into the water with buoys in the water. That's just totally against the whole customary use in my totally non-legal opinion, but I think that it's true. So I don't know how we separate that from the customary use. The sign issue should be way far away from interfering with the customary use. And if you're going to make a sign ordinance, you have to make sure you steer clear of interfering with anything that is guaranteed by customary use, because that is codified 1987.
All right. So again, I acknowledge, I think we all will acknowledge, at least, I'll speak for myself though, that there are other topics we still have to cover as a city, and we do have them as customer use, and we've got future sessions on that. And so I think for us, again, we started by just saying, we're just trying to understand, because I'll be frank, what we discussed when we talked about this emergency sign ordinance is everything said 50 feet from the mean high water line. And what became clear to us right there in that discussion is that nobody can point to you where the mean high water line is for each property. And so it's not like I can look at it and go, this property's mean high water line is here and the next one is there. And so we just acknowledged that was not something that was enforceable. And so we'd like to find something that is, but I would, yeah, I said it during the emergency meeting, so I'm already on record, if you will. I don't want to see signs put down on our beach. I don't want to see those kind of things. But I do acknowledge that there is private property in this area, and people need to be able to protect the private property, right? And so it's striking a balance that is not doesn't change the character per se of St. Pete Beach, and doesn't change the experience of that I've known for 40 years of walking up and down this beach and not running into signs per se. But I really do want to understand if city manager, man, if you need any other, if you want to guide the conversation, because I think we also have ideally a hard stop in 25 minutes.
I just have to add one thing though, because you just said something that I don't think represents the current ordinances that we have. We currently had an ordinance that says no signs on the beach within 40 feet of the visible high water line. So we don't even have an emergency. We don't need to be doing this. The current ordinances already say the only signs you can have is an AIF sign for your certain water sports kind of use. It doesn't say you can have a property, and that has to be 40 feet from the visible line. Doesn't even get mired in this mean high water line discussion. It already says visible water. 40 feet is where you're allowed to put an AIF sign about your sports. So there's no emergency. They already can't do this.
So city attorney, is that true?
And I've sent the letter with the actual ordinance to the city commissioner.
So is that true? Because this whole discussion, is that true?
Well, it's kind of like looking at a quarter from two different sides, the heads and the tails. And what the ordinance says is you can put an A-frame sign within 40 feet of the water for your water sports business. It doesn't say that everything else is prohibited. Doesn't say everything else is prohibited.
All right, again, I'm sorry. Madam City Manager, is there questions you have that?
I do not have any more questions. This was the topic, so unless we've missed some feedback on ideas.
At some point, I'm hoping you can clarify or take this information that you've got and ultimately come back with a recommend. Do you have what you need to do that? I guess we'll make sure
unless there are new ideas that have not been shared.
Okay.
Then
we can continue this. I just want to make sure that we give you the information you need.
I don't want people to leave here that you had your voice and then.
Is there anyone that has an idea about how to delineate a property line without a sign? Yeah, let's get those. I mean, this is crazy, but I have kids, right? And they have this thing, I think it's called Pokemon or something. They take their phone and they go like this and they can see creatures, and these creatures are there.
Okay.
What?
Geolocation.
Geolocation.
You could plant seals. Okay? They're protected. Now, I understand that if one were to plant seals, say on the corner of a property or along, I guarantee what will happen is what seals do is as they exist, they collect sands and a dune will form. Okay? So
And then we can't touch it.
Dunes between the
yeah, and so you would have to do, so but it's a visual, it's a natural, they're protected. If you kept up on, say, your sand cleaning, like, all right, keep that little L in the corner, keep that little L in the corner, you know what I mean? If you kept up with that, then they will not be grown.
Touch a seal.
Well, you have to give permission to, you have to give permission to plant. You have to give permission to, where and all of that, there's details to be worked out. But planting something, you could plant. That is something that's a visual, it's natural, it's soft, it goes, yes, yes.
Forest.
What's that?
Well, it's forest, know what that means.
Well, they're
But please know you can't
Please
be in the
do.
ditch, you're not allowed to be in the ditch, but then you feel like an ass, cause someone's set up. And you're like, can you please move, where if they see a sign that says, oh, we can't come past here.
Are they gonna set up in Sea Oaks?
Yes,
They-
they will walk right over them.
Well-
They have to be locked up on my dog, and I'm on my dog.
We also deal with that as well, but and again, it's not 100% perfect, but for the most part, we, of course, we get the.
You're gonna get scored, the problem is we need the dumbest bear to know.
You can put, there's also prickly pear, you can put prickly pear, there's Spanish sword, there's, I got this,
the people walking, that's against county regulation.
What's that?
We can't keep people walking.
So I like your idea,
It's a
but
good
I like your
idea.
idea, but I don't like the seals, because seals like they're protected, but a palm tree is not protected. I have no problem putting a palm tree, and a palm tree goes to the beach. So if we do palm, I have no problem doing a line of palm trees all the way down. Give it a nice, beautiful look, but palm trees all the way down, and that way, we'll just line of palm trees all the way down. So yeah, I have no issue with that. So palm trees are great.
Well, Jack and his wife have gone down to Siesta Key, and they've been doing this for 10 years. They have a really unobtrusive way, I guess, of displaying.
I'm gonna put these on here. I mean, these are very pleasant. They're just pictures of how they deal with these kind of problems. I mean, these are all removable.
By the way, if you want to come up.
They actually, they do this every day. They put them in, they take
Can
them
you
out.
hold it up a little bit so we're just kind of.
It's all hold it up for you.
Some of you guys might not like these, but you know, but.
They're basically flags.
Flags.
Essentially, they're flags that delineate the.
But I'm gonna, yeah.
Consistent.
Okay.
Sheriff from the rest of the city.
Temporary flags, presumably that come up each evening is kind of what you're alluding to, I'm
Yes,
guessing.
that's what they do on it. And it's just, I think it's an
They're all
idea.
about- We're already talking about how to build the prison and you haven't defined the rule that gets you kept out of, kept in a prison.
We want
Which is what this is.
500 of those.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting concept.
Any other ideas we haven't heard?
Sort of confirm where you started, because I think there's still confusion. So what you were talking about was in fact the wet sand in terms of the sign.
The
Not
sign
the property line.
would have to be 50 feet
From the
from
wet
the
sand.
wet sand.
We can let people.
But you also say they can't be in that wet sand, you can't be in that dry sand.
No, you can't to do the things I showed you on the prior.
Well,
You
but it
can-
didn't even include sitting on a towel at that point. And now it will.
In this, if you're in the water and you set your towel down.
No, not in the water. In those
Can you
50
sit
feet.
on your towel?
In those 50 feet.
That's
Can you have
where you-
can you have a low chair without an umbrella?
Maybe on some places on the beach, yes.
No, but
On
it's
the
been
wet-
customary that you can do it anywhere, and that's been the law that's been enforced for time immemorial. So you can't change that now and then argue over the shape of the sign when the fundamentals haven't been addressed.
You're trying to consider, you just have to pay him $20, that's all.
No, I only go for half an hour. at a time, so
That's for everybody.
There's a resident, I want to pop it on the
Let's
beach.
have 500 of those flags all on, maybe 1,000, that would be better.
There's
I've seen
issues
Italy
here.
does it all the time. I just came back from Italy. That's what they have on their beaches in Italy.
And I don't live in Italy.
Where do you want it? The Free State.
I think.
I live in the Gulf and the Atlantic for this reason.
I think I could add something that might help.
Okay, please.
So, for customary use doctrine, I know we're not really talking about it today, but you're kind of getting bogged down in it a little bit. The owner of private property, even under customary use doctrine, can make any use of the property that is consistent with such public use and is not calculated to interfere with the exercise of the right of the public to enjoy the dry sandy area as a recreational adjunct to the wet sand or foreshore area. If they can show it's ancient, reasonable and peaceful, exercise without interruption and within certain boundaries, it's obligatory or compulsory they look at, and whether it's not inconsistent with other customs or law, and it's been done by a multitudinous number of persons historically over time immemorial. So just because you put a flag up doesn't mean the public can't continue to walk across the area with customary use. The question is, does that flag interfere with your customary use? And if it's just small flag, maybe not. But if it's a giant structure or something, maybe it is. But the two things are a little bit separate. One is delineating the property line, and maybe there are ways to do it less obtrusively than with the metal parking signs that nobody wants to see everywhere. Maybe it's just a movable A-frame sign that's moved or taken down at sunset. But keep these things separate, because even if they have a private property sign, cone, post, A-frame, and they call the sheriff and say they're on my private property, that doesn't mean that you are guilty of trespass. If this is an area that's always been used, even though it's privately owned, customary use says you can continue to use it for that customary
But
use.
that's why we need an affirmative defense, and by removal of our pass ordinance, that took that away.
Right,
Because we were able to say
customary
customary
use is a common law thing and does not need an ordinance
So
to enforce. If a property owner is saying, I want you to be arrested for trespass, and the sheriff asks you to leave, and you don't leave, and you're actually trespassed, then in criminal court, your defense is customary use doctrine, and it's based on the case law, Tony Rama. It's not based on an ordinance.
We shouldn't have to prove
What
ourselves.
is the point of the flag though? If it's beyond where customary use is allowed, right?
I
And
think
what's
what's
the point of the
happening,
flag?
I think what's happening is that, going back to the root cause, why, ask it 5 times and you get to the root cause. I think it's not involving everybody that's going on the beach. I think it's what originated was calls for trespass for people who were drunk or disorderly or violating the rule on no alcohol on the public beach and brought private coolers and tents.
And ownership
And
doesn't need
that's
to be determined
what
anyway.
caused maybe the controversy to come up.
Started with people sitting.
Ownership doesn't need to be determined to
I don't know
get
if
someone
it's
kicked
just
off for
sitting,
alcohol. drunk.
maybe it shouldn't be just sitting, customary use. But if it was drunk and disorderly, then, there's other laws, but that's also trespass.
So the law, it's not the drunk
Yeah.
and disorderly, the sign is that for the sheriff, and I'm not speaking for the sheriff, but I'm
And
gonna
private public.
recap what I think I heard. Cause I don't wanna go on record to say the sheriff said, but what I understand is for the sheriff department to enforce, they require that the person being told that they are trespassing had been noticed and understood that they were trespassing, and the only way to do that is they first have to have a sign.
Not to enforce
Somewhere
their
on the
alcohol
property. There has to be somewhere.
Alcohol law is everywhere.
If there is.
So they're on the private property.
So the flag should only be up to where customary use ends or begins, whatever, at that.
Flag is just a safety to say we don't want anything 50 feet from visible water so people can use, they can traverse, they can.
People did. No, now they're not, they're only allowed to sit in the water. You're actually, this is changing what customary use has been. So even putting a misleading flag out there and then telling people they can't do certain things, the sheriff always has been able to enforce our alcohol laws and all these other laws without determining whose property it's on. They use an address, but it doesn't matter where you do it. You don't need to have to determine ownership to do that. And if you're just there sitting on a towel, I mean, I was stopped just for sitting over at one of the hotels, sitting on the towel because it was the first dry sand after swimming. And they came over and started hassling us. That is not the customary use. And the city needs to protect our customary history. They can't do anything that changes it. And once the city allows changes like these flags, which is why they've never had them before, you're changing customary use, and it will make it that much harder to ever protect the public's right to use it. And as far as the teen takeovers and things, I was concerned about that too, because the hotels provide a good service to protect their area. If you have a business, protect your area. I'm with that. But what you can't, and you should always, and I've always told people, don't be an asshole. Don't put your chair next to the chair that's being rented. Don't bring your cooler next to the people that are selling stuff. Go somewhere else. But what's going to happen is that we're changing customer use, and they look at what the city is allowed. And that's why we've been so careful to word the wording that we have in the ordinances too.
But it's also important for property owners too. If you have a beautiful piece of St. Pete Beach and you want to see the Gulf, you don't want to see 15 tents in front of you that blocks your patrons from seeing the Gulf on property that you own.
Then let's limit the height of the tents in that area.
No, nobody wants to see that tent. Nobody wants to see
that.
a
Nobody
party
wants to see those
out in front of you.
parking signs.
I mean, it's the same as if somebody says, I'm gonna come to your beautiful green front yard. I'm gonna put up a tent and invite 20 of my friends out there, and we're gonna go sit in your front yard and suntan.
Yes,
That's not-
yeah.
Gentlemen first. Thank you for it.
I appreciate the comments, and I wanna, it's actually a great reason to, this clarification that we really need to wrap our heads around, which is that delineating where private property is a completely different question from what uses are permitted on that property and by whom, okay? I own a house on 46th. Duke Energy has the right to come on my property to service their pole. My two neighbors next to me have a 10-foot driveway going behind their house from the side street that goes into my backyard. I have an easement over there to both of those, my neighbors' parcels. They can't fence that driveway off because it's my easement, okay? I don't own their property. I have a right to use a specific part of their property for a specific use, okay? That is what customary use is. Let's not get confused. And John is absolutely right to this point. We're conflating two different things, okay? A property owner putting up, there's one issue is whether or not a private property owner can delineate their property, their private property on the beachfront using one or more signs of whatever type. That's issue number one. Issue number two is whether the public, resident, beachgoer, visitor, tourist, don't care, whoever, has a common law, as Ralph correctly states, right that has existed since 1974 in the Tonorama case. The Florida Supreme Court said, if those criteria are met, ancient, uninterrupted, continuing, free from dispute, however they said it in this Supreme Court case, I don't remember verbatim. If those things are true, then the public has the right. It's self-executing. And to your point, Ralph, it's correct that you don't need an ordinance, but the Florida legislature did just last year repeal former Governor Scott's bill that imposed this crazy process to establish customary use. And if you look at the Judicial Committee commentary to that repeal, it actually says cities can go back to doing this by ordinance now. If you want to say that this part of your beach is subject to customary use by the public, you can do that by ordinance now. You no longer have to go through that convoluted legal process. That's all that bill did. But be clear, there are two different issues here. Okay?
Yeah.
One quick question though, to build on the where we were before that. How many signs are we talking here? Regardless of how far from the water they may be, can we put one every 5 inches? Because I know some people would probably do that.
Sure. That's a fair question.
I think going back to what you were saying, what is it that we're trying to prevent? If it's bad behavior, loud music, big tents. I mean, I think we're spending a lot of time on property. And I think that we really should be looking at the behaviors, because nobody wants to go to the beach and hear some boombox so I mean, I think it's the behavior that is really causing a lot of the problem.
Focus on
And they
that.
can do that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was heading with the why, right? So I agree. I don't think anybody here is trying to change anybody's property ownership or anything like that. It's about how, again, I'll give my personal opinion. I don't speak for the commission. You know, it's, you said it very well. I don't publicly use your term. Don't be an ass, but you know, let's respect each other's space, rights, right? You're paying customers that presumably paid a premium to not have somebody sit right in front of them with a 10-foot tent with a boombox. You're being an ass when you do that, right? And so if only everybody would not be an ass, we'd be fine. I think we wouldn't be having these conversations, right? But I would love to find personally, I would love to find a solution that is hopefully enforceable, doesn't result in the necessity of changing the look and character of our beach up and down the line, but yet elicits the type of behaviors or enforces the type of behaviors that we are really probably all agreeing that none of us would want, whether it's on the public beach or the private beach, right? So how do we get to a place where we can make people who don't want to behave without changing the character and style of living? I mean, that's kind of in my head what I'm trying to solve. Too many hands went up at once, and I apologize.
Isn't that what we're talking about? Maybe the next meeting you start out by saying to do with beach fires, alcohol, dogs, and decibel, back to that infamous lovely sound ordinance. Cause I agree, those loud boom boxes and stuff, that's all can be regulated through sound, decibels, and all the things like we're gonna be discussing at the next meeting. It's about behaviors, like Cindy said.
Can I just, I'm sorry, I realized I saw a bunch of hands come up and it's been occurring to me that if I walked out with my phone, I'm sure, Mr. Cezanne, you could tell me the geo coordinates of the corners of each of your lots, right? And so I could walk out with my phone, put the geo coordinates in, and it could say, take 2 more steps forward, go 3 steps left. Oh, here it is. You're standing right over it, right? Presumably with a good enough phone or a good enough GPS device, I could find it, right? And so, and that wouldn't necessitate a sign. It wouldn't necessitate anything. It would just say, this is where that property is now enforceable or not, right? And so I don't know that that's a viable technical approach, but all we're really trying to say is there is a point where it is private property versus otherwise, and therefore enforceable on things. And the problem that we have as I'm hearing it is the sheriff is saying, I don't know where this starts and ends. And so again, I'm telling you, if we had the right GPS technology, I could walk out and I could go, look, this is it right here. And anything, clearly you're in front of it and behind it. And I'm looking for a solution that is more that than I need a sign, I need a protected CO with all due respect. I want something that's not gonna change the look and feel of our beach, but yet allows, our businesses to enforce what I would like to think that, I don't want to speak on behalf of businesses on either side, but I would like to think that we're worried about people being asses and not worried about people just enjoying their normal kind of historically 40, 50 years of enjoying the beach that I've known. All right, again, I'm kind of giving my opinion, but I would love to find a solution that isn't changing the look and character of our street. Again, I would love to see if there's some GPS technology or something that might help.
Well, what would be in the interest of time, did you want to give your fellow commissioners any time? Did you have?
I would love to give them, I'm sorry that I've monopolized it, so I apologize. Please.
Well, I would say that for the purposes of tonight, what seems like to me the easiest solution to it all is just to say no signs within 50 feet of the wet sand, period. And we don't need to worry about where the mean high water line is. And so, and we're talking about temporary signage, so it's easy enough to keep that 50 feet from wherever the water happens to be, regardless of where the mean high water line is. So for purposes of just what we're supposed to be doing tonight, that would be my suggestion. Because the other part of it relative to sheriff enforcement, I feel like we need to ask and expect the sheriff to enforce behavior, regardless of whether it's private or public property. So I'm not sure we've got to that point yet. So I think that needs to be readdressed. And that still leaves questions like the liability with your boundaries and also protecting your customers if you have a business, their use, but we're not trying to solve that problem. No.
I'm not gonna call on you, just holler up this is there's open forum, so I'm not yet.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've heard a couple of things clearly tonight that I think there's definite consensus on, which is that nobody wants signs close to the water. Whatever signage there is needs to be, that back far enough from the water that it's not certainly not a physical impediment to people moving across the beach. And it would be nice if it's far enough back from the water that it's not a real visual disturbance to people walking up and down the beach, although still delineates, still can delineate the property lines and still can notify people that the area is private, because I think that's part of the enforcement piece is not just where is the property line, but if I heard our city manager correctly, part of the enforcement piece is that the person who is quote unquote trespassing at that point, and I'm not going to get into what part of the beach they're on and that, but that they need to have been, they need to know, a normal person needs to know that they were trespassing. And so I'm not sure we can get away with no signs at all. I think they need to be away from the water. I think it would be more palatable to people if the signs were a more aesthetic, consistent look in some fashion. I think that would probably be helpful in general, if up and down the beach, the signs have some sort of aesthetic look. I mean, I don't know how much money it would cost everybody, but if everybody had 3 nice coconut palms on their property line and had a nice little wooden sign on the coconut palm, that would be amazing, but that's an expensive proposition. And then I think one thing we need to address is how many signs there are per parcel, right? We don't want a sign every 3 feet along everybody's property line, because that starts to get back into that very non-aesthetic, unfriendly look. And so, and then for future meetings, Ralph, or certainly for our next meeting, city attorney, I would like to hear your legal opinion on if there's anything we're doing in this sign ordinance that does affect any kind of customary use claims. And so I think we need to be clear on that. And I think we need the legal opinion of our city attorney for that.
Could I say one thing on your point? I'm not a beachfront property, but if I wanted to go into my yard and start putting 10-foot signs all over my yard, maybe I've got some mission that I wanna.
Right. It wouldn't be allowed.
It wouldn't be allowed. So it's not like it's just the beach. It's.
Yeah, we don't want to pick on anybody, right? We don't want, and to the mayor's point, I think I'm an eternal optimist, so I think that we can all get to a point where we can all get along. I always believe that, and I think that just counting on the sheriff to enforce behavior is tricky, because what is appropriate behavior in general for people on the beach might be seen by some people, depending on the clientele or the demographic of some private properties, to be not acceptable. And I think that's putting a lot of pressure on the sheriffs who try really hard to be really good guys and only address things that are really big problems, to send them out to the beach to enforce, because don't enforce these guys because I like their music, but these guys are playing shitty music, so kick them off, So I don't think we want to start getting into those kinds of conversations with the sheriff. If I were the sheriff and people were having those kind of conversations with me, I would say, look, people, I got neighborhoods with real problems. Don't tell me your problems. So I think we need to come up with something that's a little bit more consistent than just trying to enforce on behaviors that can be very subjective. So, but I think what we've heard here tonight is incredibly helpful towards being able to get something that may be more workable. And I think this is going to be a process. This isn't something that we're going to get right immediately. That's going to fix everybody's problem. I think we're looking at progress.
I think you're spot on about the process, but I think what's happening is we've got the process in the wrong order. We're doing signs, which should be last, because signs should be implementing what we're doing. And Reddington has a great example. Reddington has a customer use ordinance that they implemented in 2018. And in it, they expand. They say, but don't put a tent in front of private property. Don't do this, don't do that. I actually think we shouldn't even be doing our beach ordinance yet. We should start from really, what are we trying to accomplish? And if we implement a customary use ordinance and then lay out the bad behaviors, no loud music near the business either. No tent in front of the business. You want to have a little canopy over your chair, the one that folds up. Okay, but no walls. We've got to put, so I really think that the process needs to be start from what we're trying to accomplish and then implement it with things like the ordinance and implement it with things like the signs. But first, I think we have to fundamentally get this customary use thing across.
There isn't one. Okay.
Oh, no, there's going to be a seminar.
Yes.
But we have not been directed to take up an ordinance.
Yeah, no, seminar. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And then also, city attorney, I think it would be helpful, probably for everybody, if we could get a legal opinion at some point from our city attorney about if there is any effect on a future customary use ordinance based on the fact that the city repealed their previous customary use ordinance when it was involved in settling a lawsuit with a private property owner.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out while we're doing that more detailed memo, customary use doctrine exists in
Regardless.
Florida law,
Okay.
and common law, and you don't need an ordinance to use customary use lands.
Okay.
Or bring it as a defense to trespass. So it's out there, and it's the law.
I've got a very important question. So while we're doing all this and thinking about what happens to the signs that are out there now?
So if something passes on the 9th, on the 10th, it will be the law of the city. And we would be enforcing.
Second reading is on June 23rd.
23rd.
Customary use is also another enforceability.
No, the
issue.
second reading.
When I started working there was no beach. So we have no customary use of our beach. So if we don't enforce the property lines now, then we are granting customary use. So we have to.
Understood.
But if it came from a false, it's public.
Yes, sir. To Commissioner Marriott's point, when it comes to working with the great men and women at Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, I would really caution that we need to take a hard look at what customary use actually entails. I think we kind of miss sometimes the obvious. The word customary means I can't go out in front of Mr. Cezanne's hotel and start selling firecrackers and operating a gun range, but I can sit in a chair and sunbathe. In fact, that's in the Florida Supreme Court opinion from 1974. So if a sheriff's deputy is being asked to trespass me because I am sitting in a chair on private property, which is precisely what one of the things that customary use allows me to do, then that's going to be problematic. And to the city attorney's point, yes, absolutely true. The customary use of self-executing doesn't need an ordinance. The concern on that for me is when people are getting trespassed, I actually would have to go get trespassed, go to court, assert an affirmative defense, and win a court case. And I have a sneaking suspicion that certain private property owners would be trespassing people en masse and making them go do that. That's part of the benefit of having an ordinance, is to say, they have the right to be here. You can't trespass them. It provides crystal clarity to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, who just knows that there's an ordinance, and we're not going to trespass people for sitting in a chair 10 feet from the water.
Make sure.
So I want to make it clear as well that the sheriff will trespass you. It is private property. We will inform you first that you are on private property. The signs are there to
I look
inform
forward
you.
to it.
The signs are there to inform you. We will then inform you. And if you do not move, they will move you in slow rate. They will.
So he doesn't leave us customary use.
I agree with the 50 feet of either the visible water line or the mean high water line, whichever we determine that to be. I like the idea of a movable sign, that if it needs to chase this visible water line, then it needs to chase the visible water line. It's something like maybe an A-frame, and we make exception for that, whatever, because most of those are plastic and they float. You're not gonna get hurt with metal on those. I like the idea of a permit being required. And a limit to the number, whether that be per feet, because some properties are smaller than others. Normally I would say, and from one corner to the other, but some properties are much larger than others, so that isn't realistic for people to notice, where they're at necessarily. The other thing, if we're getting into, which I think this would potentially stop the whole title search deed issue potentially, or if we're going to go that route, I do like being able to determine, if we're going to determine exactly where that is. If we're not doing visible and we're doing something that's more set, like a mean high water line, somebody else a resident had sent an email to all of us talking about measuring from the back corners of the building of the property to that mean high water line surveyed, which the property owner would be responsible for providing that, and then being able to adjust accordingly. That way the sheriffs can do the measurement off the corners of the property, of the building, and not haphazardly off the sand. That's hopefully we can come to terms on that. I understand everybody needs to notify or put notice out for their property. But again, safety is number one factor out here, and I, agree with the customary use doctrine as well.
So I would say that I prefer passive, not active measures, maybe beacons to just differentiate property lines that seen that used in other places.
What's a beacon?
A beacon, it's something where it's buried into the ground beneath visibility. Somebody can walk up with a device and it literally says you're on the spot. And they're cheap. They're handheld devices. The technology is readily available.
So something like those little survey markers you see in the
We
ground.
call them personal safety beacons, PSBs. They're used in water rescue and crafts, mountains, whatever. They're $50. They're waterproof. They'll last forever. So,
An
but
air tag, like an air tag, we'll just put.
yeah, actually, it's a big air tag. Actually, that's what it is. Yeah. And passive, not active. I'm not a science guy. The other thing to consider, and this is somebody wrote this into me while we were sitting here. They couldn't make it. They apologized, but they said that at any point, if any public funds have been used during renourishment by ACE, there may be considerations for a guarantee for public access in perpetuity. So that's something that it's not, we're not going to dispute it now, but it is a good question to ask, that if at any time you've ever had public funds used, then there should be an expectation that you should also have public access.
Well, I've been for 47 years, I don't know anybody else. I can tell you that there has not been 47 years. And from the Johnson's Art to PCI, there has not been.
The Army Corps of Engineers would know for sure.
Yeah, so that's.
But a vault can also change it. That's why title search is important.
Sand moves. Yeah, sand moves.
We don't know that the sand in front of you didn't come from Upham or.
Upham's a straight line right now because it's all moved.
Not my idea, just passing it on for something that couldn't have
We have never requested sand or have we gotten any sand.
Thank you. Well, I will add one comment though, just from a personal observation. So I did a staycation the weekend before Memorial Day at the suites, beach suites, rented a beautiful cabana to the gentleman that walked out his point. That's something that's really nice to do. It was in front of beach chairs, so I'm taking everyone else's view, which is kind of funny. But it wasn't only the signs, it was 2 physical security guys at the undertow. And that to me was disruptive. That was ruining my day, so keep in mind, it's not just signs. Having people chased off the beach after one another for putting a towel down.
No, we don't mind.
I have pictures and videos to dispute that, so.
Creates a huge.
Yeah, it was disruptive. It was disruptive. So, and I'm talking as a customer and as a resident at that point. So that totally made people feel unwelcomed. And I didn't say anything to them, but it's just an observation. So
So the work plays both ways because we actually had armed guards Memorial Day weekend. The feedback we had was so positive. They said they never felt safer. We've actually booked guests from other hotels that walked by, saw that we had armed guards, and said we were going to stay.
That's what you'd like the rest of the whole beach, right?
Because people want to feel safe. In this day and age, God forbid, another thing like Clearwater Beach.
and I hope that we don't put the bias out there.
Yeah. Guard to safety. Everybody else say, why do we have police? Why do we have sheriff? That's correct. Listen, everyone has their own property, they can do whatever they want.
All right, let's reel it back in, please. City manager, anything else you need from us?
We need, this is super helpful, and we will do our best to bring you some.
To remind us on next steps, just so we're all very clear. And thank you, number one, thank you, everybody. I realize there's passion on both sides. Again, I'm like Commissioner Marriott, and I assume the rest of us ever optimistic that we can find a solution to not be asses to each other, find something that allows a nice medium ground without changing the character of our beach. That's where I'm hoping we get to. I've heard lots of great ideas today. I appreciate everybody's input. And please tell us where this heads next. I think I have a sense, but I'd like to be very clear.
Second reading heads to commission on the 23rd of June. And then next week, June 9th, is the first reading on the other 2 beach ordinances. So please join us.
And then the customary use discussion.
The other 2 ordinances on the 23rd. Second reading.
Sorry, and then the customary use discussion. Do we have a date?
We have a seminar
Thank you.
with our esteemed city attorney, who's going to give a presentation on essentially the history of customary use,
Okay.
Florida law, how applicability to St. Pete Beach, some of the nuances.
Daytime
Because
location.
It's 5 o'clock.
And July 23rd, Thursday, July 23rd at 5 o'clock.
5 to 6:30.
It'll be like a
We're gonna push out a big.
more like a legal seminar, what
Yeah.
customary use is. We've taken into account some of the things we've heard tonight. We have the beach ordinance coming up on June 9th. It's possible that we will discuss and possibly add that the city of St. Pete Beach recognizes the common law doctrine of customary historical use, period. And then we could put that in to the code. One of the troubles of trying to delineate how many feet you're going to go in and out is it's different as you go up and down the beach, what history is and what can be proven. But we do want to make sure that we recognize it.
Anything else?
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you.